It is December 1st, so it is time for the November reading recap. I read 25 books in November, which is hard for me to believe. As I was looking back over the list, I was like, I can't believe this was just in November. It feels like it was a long time ago. So we're going to go through all of the books for November. Again, I'm going to do them in categories. So we'll do romance, then thrillers, then literary fiction, then some fantasy, and then a little mystery, which I categorize separately from thrillers. So let's do it. Okay, first romance is Maybe Once, Maybe Twice by Alison Rose Greenberg, and I really loved this book. Maggie is about to turn 35 years old, and at some point throughout her life, she had told two men to come find her when she was 35 years old if neither one of them were married. And she kind of forgot about it with one of them, but definitely didn't forget about it with the other because it was more recent. So one was like a high school boyfriend and one was a more recent relationship. And so this story covers what happens when both men show up. Not at the same time, but there's some relationship stuff that happens on both sides of that, and it bounces back and forth between history, so you kind of see how those relationships came to be and how they ended up where they were. And there was just something about I just really loved this story. It was such a great tale, and if you find yourself rooting for both men in the end, and ultimately she ends up with one, but she has to choose herself first, and so I think that's what made this really delightful. So Maybe Once, Maybe Twice, Alison Rose Greenberg. Really loved this romance. Okay, next up we've got Check and Mate by Allie Hazelwood, which Allie Hazelwood is a favorite of mine. They're just kind of these really fun love stories. Because this one is YA, it is, no sex, there's no spicy scenes in this. It's just this kind of sweet love story of two people that are chess competitors. They're professional chess players. The one female, Mallory, she kind of left chess behind because she had some bad memories associated with it from her family. And then she enters this competition as a friend, kind of persuades her to do that, and she accidentally beats the world champion, who is our male main character. And so it starts this rivalry / friendship, and that grows into more between the two of them. So this was a really cute, fun love story. Check and Mate by Allie Hazelwood. Okay, next up we've got Friends Don't Fall in Love by Erin Hahn. And this was a book that I got in my Ripped Bodice monthly subscription box. So that's a really fun subscription box. I definitely recommend that for romance readers. And this one is set in Nashville in the country music industry, which was, of course, fun. So Lorelai Jones is a singer. She was kind of up and coming, and then she left the whole scene after she was canceled for singing a protest song. And the guy, Craig, he's a producer, and they had kind of a one-night stand when she was up and coming, and then they remained friends but didn't really talk, and now she's coming back into the industry and he has his own studio. So they connect again and they're just friends, but it's kind of a friends to lovers situation. Again, another one that I really enjoyed. This was great. Okay, next up in the romance category is my November Book of the Month box selection. So this is This Spells Love by Kate Robb. And in this novel, a woman has just broken up with her boyfriend and she's miserable going through this breakup. And she also has a male best friend that she happened to have met on the same night that she met her boyfriend. They've been together for many years, but they've always just been friends, her and this other guy. So one night she's with her aunt who owns a bookstore and her sister, and they are drinking a lot, and they cast a spell from an old book that says you're gonna forget about, love. So she does that kind of on a whim, wakes up the next morning and is back in time. No. She's not back in time. it's the same time, but the meeting never happened. So she can kind of see what happened to her life if she hadn't met the boyfriend, which also means that she didn't meet the best friend. So now she's got to like re-engage with the best friend and make him a friend again because she needs a kiss to seal the spell to go back to her original life. Anyway, it's good. It's, you know, a little magical realism, which is, you know, cute and fun. It was an easy read. I read it in an afternoon. So if you're looking for something like that, this is a good one for that. Okay, next in romance, I listened to a series that had 3 books. So it was Beginner's Luck, Luck of the Draw, and Best of Luck, all by Kate Clayton. And these, it's around 3 friends who bought a lottery ticket together and won the lottery. And they each have, you know, something that they want to do now that they have the freedom to do that with the money. So whether it was quit their jobs or go back to school or, you know, buy a house, whatever it is. So each book follows one of their stories. And the lottery doesn't have that much to do with it. I think that's just kind of like a hook to bring you in because it's not like a huge narrative factor. I didn't think in any of these stories. But I did like them. I liked the characters and I liked the friendship between the 3 women, who I think they're probably in their late 20s. It probably tells you that, but I can't remember. But it seems like they were kind of established at some point, but not so far down their career paths they couldn't do something different. So one's a lawyer, one is a professor in like a science specialty at the university, and one works in social work and is going back to school. And so these were cute. I liked them. It was fun to listen to. Again, for the friendships, and they're interesting. I won't go into all the details, but it's fun. Fun seems to be the best word I can use to describe romance novels. I mean, I just like to lose myself in those stories. Oh wow. Okay, so Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. This is another one that I listened to, and the audiobook was really well done. The characters were great. It's told in alternating point of view, so you've got both the female character and the male character going back and forth, but they're also in the same chapter. Like when one speaks, the talent speaks in that voice, so it feels like you're kind of listening to a play. But the premise here is that they are both serial killers, but they only kill other serial killers, and they're kind of famous in their own circles and had never met each other but came upon the same victim. And the book is pretty gruesome in the way that it describes some of these murders and their tendencies, but the 2 of them together as a couple, it's like downright dirty. This is quite pornographic to have to listen to, but it was done really well and I was thoroughly entertained. But the trigger warnings, the content warnings at the front were something you should definitely pay attention to if you are any kind of shy when it comes to this stuff. Like, I was laughing just listening to the content warnings. I was like, are they kidding me with this? And so anyway, it's very entertaining, but it is not for those that are shy when it comes to the spicy scenes or gruesome. It's gruesome because it's murder and sex. It's the most bizarre combination, but I really liked the characters, and I think listening to it is great because of the way the talent executes it. But you definitely don't want anybody else to walk in when you're listening to it. I would have been mortified. Like, every time my husband came back, like if I was like listening to the book while I was putting on makeup or whatever, I'd quickly pause it. I was like, he does not need to hear what I am listening to. It's hilarious. All right, next up is Right Man, Right Time. Yeah, Right Man, Right Time by Megan Quinn. And if you've read anything by Megan Quinn, you know what to expect in some of those spicy scenes. It is very spicy. In this particular one, we've got a professional hockey player who meets a college student randomly in a bar. It's kind of a fake they end up creating a fake relationship and then, of course, falling in love. And they make a big deal out of their age differences because he's 31 and she's 21. And so take that, however you feel about that, understand that before you listen to this book. But there's one scene in the book that they use as a callback throughout the story regarding a donkey and eating, I think, a hot dog or something. Anyway, I laughed so hard. I had tears rolling down my face as I read that scene. The language and the banter is fantastic. I will say that when it comes to the spicy scenes, which are very spicy, the male main character has a Jacob's ladder piercing on his, and I couldn't picture what that was. So after I was about 3/4 way through the book, I was like, screw it, I'm gonna Google it. And I wish that I hadn't had to do that because now that image is burned in my head, but there you go. Trigger warning for you. Okay, there's a whole subgenre of romance books around hockey players. Had no idea. I've accidentally found a second book in that subgenre, and I read Same Time Next Year by Tessa Bailey, which covers a hockey player and a bar owner who enter into a fake relationship to help him get his green card. And they have to do it for a year. They have to get married for a year or something like that. Anyway, it is also downright dirty. It felt like I was reading porn and work. I read this one on my Kindle, so at least both of those, the Right Man, Right Time by Megan Quinn and Same Time Next Year by Tessa Bailey, I read on my Kindle. So I didn't have to worry about anybody overhearing, but man, I read some dirty books this month. Okay, then last in the romance category, I read Mr. Big Shot by R.S. Gray, and this is a enemies to lovers trope that is set in a law firm with a new associate being the female and an established senior partner being the male. She works for him in his department and, thinks that he's evil. He's immediately attracted to her but tries to hide it. And, sparks fly. So it's one of those super easy, spicy romance novels that you can read in, a day if you're on it, or I like to read those typically at night. I can read a few pages and go to sleep and then continue to read it because it's easy. It's fun. There's nothing special about it, but it's entertaining. All right, let's move into the thriller category. I continued the series that I thought started last month called The Naturals, where it's kids that are recruited by the FBI because they have some sort of natural talent. So I listened to these as audiobooks, and I read the last two in the series. So Bad Blood and 12, which 12 was actually a novella that kind of wraps up the series. And they're fine. Again, it's just kind of entertaining. The whole premise of of kids being part of the FBI because they have some sort of natural ability. It's not supernatural ability. It's just they're naturally talented at something. And each book really focuses on a different character, but they're all narrated by the same character. But you kind of get more insight among some of the other characters in each book. I had to finish the series. That's essentially what that is. Okay, next in the thriller category, I read John Grisham's latest book, The Exchange. And this is a continuation of The Firm, which The Firm came out so many years ago. I mean, it was in the 90s, I believe. And The Exchange picks up 15 years after The Firm ended. So we've got our Mitch character and his wife, and they're now in New York, and Mitch works for the world's largest law firm. He's a partner, he's doing really well, he's left all that Memphis junk behind him. Well, one of his cases takes him out of the country where his colleague gets kidnapped, and now he's got to work on negotiating recovery of his colleague. I'm going to tell you, I did not I did not care for this book at all. Like I felt like it was written almost like an outline. Like there was no like story built, or it just felt so bare minimum. Like the bare minimum effort was done to write this book is what it felt like to me. I hated the ending. So I don't know, like I loved The Firm when it came out, and I loved all of those John Grisham books. He kind of had like a run right there in the 90s, and I haven't liked his last couple of ones, so I don't know if it's I've changed as a reader or he's changed as a writer, but you know, this one I can't really recommend. I didn't love it, but there you go. Next category is literary fiction, which I don't read a lot of. I used to read a lot more of this, but I don't read as much of that anymore. And I think it's just because I have like this, like I'm in a headspace where I want fun, light reading. And so I sometimes don't like to read stuff that's a little bit heavier and takes longer to read. But I have a friend who actually purchased 4 books for me to read. And I've committed to reading. I read 3 of them in November, so I've got 1 lined up for December. And some of these are old, like, no, you know, I mean, they're old books. So the first up is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And this is set on a college campus up in the northeastern part of the United States, where there is a group of students who study Greek, and they take all of their classes with one Greek professor, and they've kind of got this little like cult-like situation happening among them. And a new student from California comes in and really wants to join this group, and he ends up kind of getting involved with them. So the story opens on a murder. So you know somebody dies at the very beginning, and you know which one of them it is, but then the rest of the book is told to get you to the point where they commit the murder, and then what happens afterwards as they try to cover it up, and you know how the group breaks apart as a result of that. It is beautifully written. I think it's probably overwritten. I mean, Donna Tartt, I did read The Goldfinch, and it was also a wonderful book with lots of twists and turns, but it was also very long. And so I liked this book, but I didn't love this book. Donna Tartt, The Secret History. All right, next up in this category is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. And this one came out this year, and she was a Pulitzer Prize finalist for The Great Believers, which I did not read, but I probably will try to read now. So this book is, our main character is a podcaster and a film professor in California, but she went to a boarding school for high school on the East Coast. And she's going back there now to teach a course for 2 weeks. And while she's there, she's like reminded of all of these things that happened while she was in high school. Namely, that one of her roommates at the time, she wasn't roommates at the time that this happened, but one of her roommates while she was there was murdered. And a man was convicted of the murder, but she never really thought that he did it. So as part of the like 2-week course that she's teaching high school students, she's asking them to come up with podcast ideas, and one of them wants to investigate this murder again, so it sucks her right back in, and all of the people that she went to high school with. So it's got like this really intriguing premise, and I loved the story. I thought it was really, really good. You know, kind of integrating all of the like mystery and thriller aspects of it, plus the podcasting and film references. There's a couple of techniques that she uses in the book that I don't love. Like she's narrating to someone, and it's who she thinks is the killer, and that it was confusing to me at first. Like I had to go back and reread some pages to understand who she was talking to, and I think that's just like a device just a storytelling device that just didn't click with me. And then there's like there's several places in here where she tries to imagine, that her main character tries to imagine herself as a killer that she thinks might have done it as she's kind of going through her list of suspects. And that was just, it kind of threw me from the whole book. But other than that, I thought it was a really good story, and and interesting if you like thrillers and kind of like that whole podcast culture. Okay, the next one in this literary fiction category is Empire Falls by Richard Russo. This one did win the Pulitzer Prize. I think it was 2002-ish or something like that. I loved this book. I loved it so much. The writing is exquisite. I mean, like, I just loved so many things about how this book was written. I underlined so many different passages in it that just really connected with me. So the idea is that it's set in Maine, a small town in Maine. It's very blue collar and a little bit run down now because all the factories that helped build it up have been moved overseas where labor is cheaper, but you still have this like one really wealthy woman in town who kind of owns everything. And so it's life in this town and what's happening, really focusing on the owner of this diner and his child and relationships, and it's just a really good book. The book was also made into a miniseries on HBO, which I did start watching after I finished this book. I didn't finish the miniseries because it is so parallel to the book that, and it's kind of old, so it looks really dated. And I just finished the book, so I didn't feel like I was kind of getting anything there, but this is a good book. Okay, the last book in our category of literary fiction is really a novella. It's called The Honor of Your Presence by Dave Eggers. And I love Dave Eggers. He also wrote The Circle, if you're familiar with that, and the sequel to that, plus many, many others that are just fantastic. He's a wonderful writer. So in this short story, you've got a graphic designer who does invitations for big events. She's kind of a homebody, and she has her eccentric uncle who lives with her, and he starts asking why she never goes to any of these events that she does these invitations for. She's not invited. Well, he convinces her to do some party crashing, and it really opens up her world, and it's just a delightful little, very short read. Okay, our next category I'm calling cozy mystery. I'm not really sure if that's the right category for it or right description for it. But the first one is Dirty 30 by Janet Ivanovich, which is part of her Stephanie Plum series. So it's the 30th book in Stephanie Plum series. Stephanie Plum is a bounty hunter in New Jersey. She is kind of accident prone. She has a crazy grandmother that tags along. She's got a former prostitute that also tags along. She's got relationships with two different men. One is a security expert and kind of tall, dark, handsome, and mysterious. And the other is a cop that she grew up with and knows his family, and they've been a part of each other's lives forever. So these books have always been really entertaining to me. I've read all of them. I think I still read them just because it's like I'm compelled to do it because it's part of the series, but I may have outgrown them. I did not love this book. I was like, I feel like it's the same story written over and over and over again. Nobody ages, nobody changes. It's just kind of, I'm over it. So I hate it, but I did not enjoy this book at all. The first ones I found hilarious and I would laugh out loud, but it's also been 20 years since I started reading these books, so it's perhaps possible that I've outgrown them. The other book in this category is Veronica Rues Breaks the Bank by L. Casimano. And this is a novella, part of her series on Finlay Donovan, which those are fun, and this was a way to give you some more background on one of the characters in the Finlay Donovan series. So Finlay Donovan is an author who was mistaken for a serial killer at some point, and then that gets her into this whole mess of trouble as she's trying to cover up murders that she didn't really commit. She's a mom of 2 and in a divorce, so she's got some relationship stuff happening. And then she has this person that she's hired as her nanny, Veronica Rues. But you don't ever really know kind of what's going on with Veronica, and this novella gives you some background as to how she ends up as Finley's nanny. So it was cute and fun. I appreciated having that little taste. She's about to come out with another Finley Donovan book, so this kind of bridges the gap to get you between books 2 and 3, I think. So if you're reading that series, definitely pick this up. If you're not reading that series, try the first one. I think it's really entertaining. It's been really popular. Okay, our last category, I'm going to just broadly call fantasy. There's some magical realism. There's some other things happening, but I'm going to broadly call it fantasy, which is a relatively new category for me. Okay, so The Unmaking of June Pharaoh. This was my October book of the month pick that I didn't read until November. And in this book, June Pharaoh is a woman living with her grandmother after her mom abandoned her when she was a baby. And apparently every woman in her family has some sort of like breakdown at some point and kind of loses their mind. So her grandmother is getting to that point, and June knows it's going to happen to her, and she's kind of not entered relationships, and she's really been mentally preparing for that so that she can make sure that never happens to future generations. She's never going to have children. Well, then it starts happening, and she starts learning more about her family and what they're not really losing their mind. They're kind of living in 2 different time periods. So there's some time travel happening here, but there's a mystery that she has to unlock as well. And this was definitely a page turner. I was super curious as to how it was going to work out and what was really happening. It's not just a straightforward like time travel. I see what happens. I'm going to go back and fix some things. It's much more complex than that, and it was really well done. So it's not really fantasy, it's more magical realism, but it's good. I really enjoyed The Unmaking of June Pharaoh. Okay, next we've got Iron Flame, which if you are involved in books at all, you did not miss this release this month. It is the second book after Fourth Wing, and it was highly anticipated. I felt like it lived up to the hype, but you know, I'm not a super critical fantasy reader either. I think the online conversation around these books is just as interesting as reading the book itself. So people like really read into what's being predicted, what's going to happen in the next book, and like analyzing every single thing, whereas I'll just enjoy the story and the worlds that get built. So the premise here is that our main character I don't even know where to go. So yeah, it's like you really have to read Fourth Wing in order to enjoy Iron Flame. That's the crux of it. But there is a love story aspect of this. It's fantasy romance, and so take that as you will. And there's dragons, and they ride dragons, and they're fighting a war, and they're just kids. They're not kids. I mean, they're in their 20s, but they're young, still in school, still learning. And there's a lot of secrets being revealed and secrets being held back. So fantasy readers, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, next in fantasy is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. And there are 2 books out, this one and the next one, which I've got the next one queued up for my December reading. But this is magic. So if you liked the show, The Magicians, it kind of reminds me of that. It's also very like Umbrella Academy-esque, and maybe even like a little bit of Hunger Games. So there's this magical society that only accepts 6 members, and they only pick them every 10 years, okay? And so people don't even know they exist, but they pick the top level magicians in different categories. And they have to train for a year, and then they have to select one member to eliminate. So there's 6 of them that come in, and only 5 of them will progress and become actual members of the society. But they don't really understand what it means to eliminate someone. Are they just voting them out? What's happening? And they are all strangers to each other. So they're like, they have to work together and complement each other's skills, but they also know that they're in competition with each other. And as it turns out, there's some secrets being held, within the society that make them start not trusting the people that brought them in. So I really like this, but I also like that kind of stuff. Like, I loved the show The Magicians. My husband and I watched that and really liked that. So I really think that falls into this category, and I'm excited to read the second one here in the next couple of weeks. Okay, last up is I started reading the Flesh and Fire series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is also related to the Blood and Ash series that I read last month. So there are 3 novels out and a 4th one coming out next year in this series. So I've read 2 of them so far. I'm reading the 3rd one now. The first one is A Shadow in the Ember, and the second one is A Light in the Flame. And they are very closely related to the Blood and Ash series. So it's like the same story, but set hundreds of years before Blood and Ash starts. So you've got a maiden who is chosen to be married off to the primal god of death. And so she is our character that we follow and who narrates the books for us. She, on her 17th birthday, she is prepared to be taken as a consort, by the primal god, and he rejects her. And she's been hidden away for her entire life because her family knew that she was going to be leaving. So now she's kind of in this weird limbo phase. And that's what's happening in the first book, is how she's dealing with life after being rejected by this primal god. And she's highly trained to kill, to protect herself. So she's doing a lot of that. She's also exploring all of the dark places in her city, and she meets an intriguing god, and sparks fly with him, and then things go from there. So that's what's happening in the first book. And then in the second book, I feel like this one's really the love story between her and the god, and kind of how they're learning about each other and figuring each other out, but also revealing secrets about her past that she wasn't aware of and his past that he wasn't aware of. But the personalities are so incredible. Like, I feel like lines could have been copied and pasted from the Blood and Ash series into this series and just like change the names, like find and replace, change the names, the way the stories are so similar. Now, has that stopped me from reading all 600 pages of each book? No. When it ends on a cliffhanger, I want to know what happens next. I mean, in theory, I know what's going to happen because I've read the Blood and Ash series, which is set after, even though these were written after. It's just it sucks you in. It sucks you in if you like these world building type books, and they are the spicy romances as well. So fantasy romance. These are your books. These are your books. I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm not mad about it. I enjoy them. Whew. All right. Well, that's the 25 books I read in November. That was a good reading month. It was a really good reading month. I'm ready for December.